Good morning, Excellencies, dear colleagues journalists, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our Brussels Press Club. Today, we have a distinguished guest talking about Sudan. Of course, this distinguished guest is really the official representative here in Brussels, capital of Europe. He is Ambassador Abdelbagi Kabeir. Sorry for my accent, but last time I've been in Sudan, I was trying to get this specific accent, but it was very difficult for me. You know, coming from the other side of the Atlantic. But anyway, the important is to communicate, and we are here to communicate what is going in Sudan through his official representative here in Brussels. Now, on behalf of Brussels Press Club, of course, as a member of the board, I wish that you will have all the answers you would like to know in order to communicate your hearers, your viewers. This conference is being web streamed around the world, and for us as journalists, but now I have my casket of moderator, it's important to confront the point of view, but the truth is only one. Thank you. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Pacha, for the introduction and giving me a new name as well. Well, you passed the name anyway. It's okay. Okay. Thank you. Dear colleague ambassadors, members of the press, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Allow me at the outset to express my profound gratitude to all of you for making the time to join us this morning. A special appreciation goes to our host, the Press Club, for making this event possible. As you may be aware, my country, the Sudan, has been ravaged by an unprecedented brutal war, led to huge loss of human lives and destruction of civil infrastructure. This unprovoked war has been launched by the rebellion of the Rapid Support Force, RSF, and its allies since April 2023 in an attempt to take control of the government of the Sudan. This enormous act by the rebel RSF and its domestic, regional, and international allies halted the transition of the Sudan and consequently deprived the people of the Sudan from the experiencing democratic election and civil rule in decades, as well as exacerbated the already dire economic and humanitarian situation in the country, as the most recent records show very troubling numbers, that over 10.7 million Sudanese are displaced. 9 of them, that's 9 millions, are internally displaced. 3.5 million out of the 9 are from the capital, Khartoum. 1.5 are dispersed in neighboring countries where we have Egypt. Actually, Chad takes the highest toll, about 500. South Sudan, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia with smaller numbers. This press conference intends to inform and update the European and international public opinion on the unjust restrictive measures recently adopted against 3 Sudanese corporates under the pretext that the activities of these corporates undermine stability and transition in the Sudan. What a claim. The government of the Republic of the Sudan that I represent considers the taken restrictive measures are unjust and will only help bring about extra suffering to the people of the Sudan and definitely halt peace and peaceful solution to the current war. Before I delve into this, it is of paramount importance to inform you that the RSF and its allied militias have committed all sorts of atrocities, violations of human rights, and crimes against humanity that are condemnable by the international laws and norms. Due to time constraint, I will shed light on only 2 examples. Starting by the capital, Khartoum. Since the flare of this war, the RSF has, from the day one, occupied civil infrastructure, institutions, citizens' homes in Khartoum state. No one was spared, including my own house, and definitely houses of most of my colleagues around here. The capital had witnessed widespread arrest and detention of civilians and systematic destruction of infrastructure, which led to the displacement of most of capital's residents to other internal and across the border, as I alluded earlier, that the 3.5 from the capital alone. Now, this also is accompanied with all sorts of blatant disregard of all norms and international laws, the type of crimes that are committed. The second example is West Darfur. Who doesn't know about Darfur? And when I say Darfur, we have in a very recent history where we had one of the worst atrocities in some decades back. The irony is that it's the same perpetrator, but in a different name. By then it was called Janjaweed, and now they call it the RSF. And the change of the name was definitely in a good intention to get them from that marauding past into a civilized and integrating them into a regular army of the country. An attempt that failed, and the result was a war. In West Darfur at Jenena, the RSF and its allied Arab militias done all sorts of crimes that could ever come into mind of any sane. The perpetrators committed war crimes, crimes against humanity, with mass killings and ethnic cleansing and sexual violence as a weapon of war. And so that is the history is being repeated once again in Darfur by the same player, the same actor, but under a different name, and definitely for a different cause. The cause, we may differ somehow, but definitely it's not noble. It's intended to change the demography of the country, because this time it's not only Sudanese Janjaweed, but Janjaweed from across the Sahel, from so many neighboring African countries from the Sahel. My profession precludes me from calling names. Witness to this and attesting to what I claimed is not a government position alone. It is witnessed and confirmed by quoting Secretary of State Antony Blinken of the United States, said, and I quote, Based on the State Department's careful analysis of the law and available facts, I have also determined that members of the RSF, that's the Rapid Support Force militia, and allied militias have committed crimes against humanity and ethnic cleansing. End of quote. The second quotation is from the chief diplomat of this very city, the capital of Europe, Mr. Joseph Borrell. He said, I quote, that those latest atrocities are seemingly part of a wider ethnic cleansing campaign conducted by the RSF with an aim to eradicate the non-Arab Masalit community from West Darfur. He further said, the international community cannot turn a blind eye on what is happening in Darfur and allow another genocide to happen in this region. End of quote, November 12th, 2023. The RSF has gained a rare record. The other documents that I'm trying to quote is by the UN panel of experts, report on the same issue and issued on 13th of January 2024. The UN Human Rights Office issued also a similar report on 23rd of June 2023, Amnesty International on 19th of June, and the US State Department in June 15th. We're quoting so many of the US because of also of its involvement in so many ways. Interestingly enough, in this time, they have some positive involvement. Now, the title of our meeting today, the EU restrictive measures that are imposed on 3 Sudanese national corporates under the pretext of their affiliation to the armed forces. I would like to reaffirm that the government of the Sudan considers these taken restrictive measures unjust and uncalled for the following reasons. Some of the reasons, and as I said, the time constraint, because I would rather entertain questions. Sudan, as you all know, is an agricultural country where a majority of the population depend on agriculture. One of the companies that have been affected by these measures is Zadna International Investment Company. This company is specialized in fields of agriculture and animal production, all sectors of field agriculture and animal production, and plays a pivotal role in improving food security, create jobs to rural labor force, and all in order to narrow the disparity gap in income and wealth generation between the rural and urban societies, and therefore limiting the abilities and capabilities of such pure civilian company will definitely limit the internal and external, increase the internal and external waves of displacement and migration. As people have to survive, you must look for where you should get your food. So the next step is to either create chaos or leave the borders and probably head towards the Mediterranean. And I'm definitely sure you understand what I mean by that. We'll come to that one when we speak of the migration across the Mediterranean. And this, of course, is a concern of the Europeans, in particular the European Union. And in this regard, Sudan used to have a good understanding of this illegal immigration processes. And Khartoum process stands an example there with the EU. Another point that I need to stress on regarding the incapacitation of the national companies that are involved in food security is that the geostrategic Sudan's location, its stability is very essential for the Red Sea, for the Sahel, and the Horn of Africa. So any measures that will create instability in Sudan is definitely going to spill over, not only to our region, but the whole way, and will also send waves of people who need to survive. Hence, the whole region of the Horn of Africa will be in the brink of collapse, insecurity, total chaos, growing risk of terrorism, and waves of migrants towards EU borders. And as you all know, Sudan, as large as it is, with 7 or 8 neighboring countries, it should be 8, I believe, because Saudi Arabia is a member as well. We do believe that the migration from Sudan to Sudan, across Sudan. So Sudan is a country of origin of migrants. It's a transit point, and it is a source as well too. A source, a transit, and an end to the question. There are people also who feel that they see Sudan as a place where they should live and stay. So with those comments, I believe that the EU's restrictive measures do not help create stability in the Sudan. It does not help improving the already existing relations with the EU. We used to have very good relations with. They were very much involved in the ongoing process in the Sudan. It's my opinion, as a representative speaking on behalf of the government, that the EU would have chosen a different path. Because it's a fact, the restrictive measures, all of you, those of you who will go and see it in the web, that it addresses as well the rebel RSF companies as well too. But the problem is having restrictive measures on 3 corporates that belong to the government or to the national army, and that again with the RSF trying to be equal. How could it be equal to those who are not equal? This is a regular national army. This is a rebel group, a paramilitary troop that's been trying to be integrated into the national army. Failure to that integration is one of the main reasons of where we are now in this war. So we believe that the equating element is not correct. It's an unjust to a national army which is formed by constitution and doing its job according to the legal and the laws of the land. So we don't believe that the EU was right in doing this, and we hope that they will understand that they were not right and they will undo what they did. Thank you very much.
Thank you, merci beaucoup. Ambassador, yeah. It's okay. After this introduction speech from the ambassador, the floor is open for the journalists. So please give your name and the name of your media. Thank you. The microphone? Okay, thank you. Open the floor. Anita?
Good morning. Good morning, Ambassador. About the restrictive measures coming from the EU, I just want to beg you to specify whether these measures are forever or do they have a timeline? How long are they supposed to act upon whatever point they were launched by the EU. Is there a timeline? We know when they started, we don't know when they will stop, or do we? Do we know? That maybe that could help.
Thank you. The question is rather very interesting to me because I do not recognize the measures in its entirety. So to discuss its time frame will indicate my acceptance to it. We do not accept the measures in principle, so we will not even dwell into whether they are time frame or how long they will take, because we are refusing it in its entirety, because they are not legal, they are not correct, they are baseless, they are not helping the existing relationship with the EU, which we are hoping to go for a better membership partnership. So I think this question should be asked the EU. But as far as we are concerned, we have our own measures to take. Thank you.
Other questions? Excuse me. Hello? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Nordin Faridi. I am the correspondent of Al Arabiya News Channel, and I would like to ask my question in Arabic, and if His Excellency would kindly answer in Arabic for the Arab viewers and in English for the audience. سعادة السفير، ماذا يحدث أو ماذا حدث في الأيام الماضية في درمان؟ إذا سمحت أن توضح لأن هذا هو الخبر الرئيسي صباح اليوم. ماذا حدث في درمان وفي قاعدة وادي سيدنا قبل أيام؟ شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا على السؤال. لكن ماذا سمعت عن الخبر؟ أنا لم أسمع خبر عن ما حدث في درمان. أي نعم.
كان عليك أن تشاهد القناة، لكن دعني يعني هناك تمرد. لا أنت عندك خبر. هناك تمرد، هناك انقلاب أو محاولة انقلاب أو تجاوز للأوامر العسكرية. يعني وضح لنا أنت ما هي الصورة. هل هو انقلاب؟ هل هو تمرد؟ هل هو تجاوز للأوامر العسكرية؟
حقيقة الأمر أن هنالك حكومة وقيادة في السودان تسير الأمور بالطريقة التي يجب أن تسير بها. وتعلمون أننا يعني في السودان نعيش أجواء حرب، وهنالك وضع غير طبيعي. لذلك من طبيعة الأشياء أن تظهر مثل هذه الأخبار، لكن الأمور تسير كما هي افترض أن تسير. شكرا. I tried to say that in Arabic, it's not good. Unless you're trying to, I'm just trying to tell you that, as you know, that Sudan is now experiencing a war, and we are living in an extraordinary situation whereby you can always anticipate any form of distress, war fatigue, but there is no change of command in the country. That's what counts. Anything else is it's possible, but the chain of command is intact, and that's what counts. الدولة ثابتة، الحكومة ثابتة، قيادة الدولة القائد العام ثابت موجود، نائب القائد العام موجود، والحرب بإذن الله إلى نهايتها، وهذا هو المهم. يكفي هذا.
Good morning,
Next.
Excellency.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Good morning, Excellency. Euromag between Belgium and Algeria. I have two questions, very short. First one, Belgium is on the lead of Europe. Did you have any contact with the Foreign Affairs here or with Belgium? And do you think they can help for something? And in the second question, it was a visit in Algiers. Then we would like to have some statement after this visit. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first part of your question regarding the Foreign Office.
You know, on the presidency of Europe, for the moment, it's Belgium.
Oh, yeah.
Then did you have any contact with this, with Madame Haja Al-Habib from the Foreign Affairs? And do you think Belgium can help in some resolution or to be a voice of Sudan also inside Europe with his this presidency?
Well, definitely we're in Belgium, and I'm accredited to the Kingdom of Belgium. And by this assumption of the presidency of Europe, that opens for us a dual interaction. And we very soon will get in touch with her. And it's part of our plan we have already having contacts on a bilateral level. And now on the multilateral level of European level, we're trying to use her good offices. She's been very proactive, engaged. We are looking forward to that. Yeah, I think you had a second part of the state, right? Yes. The second question on the recent visit by the president of the Sovereignty Council, General Burhan, to Algeria. That's a very important visit. Algeria is a very important country in the member of the AU and in the continent. We have very historical relations, very fruitful one. It was a very productive meeting between the two presidents, and there's an ongoing cooperation. We expect that it will move to a higher grounds.
Yes. Saad Safir, I have a question. This is Hussein Wali from New York, Middle East. So about NGO, humanitarian relief, it is allowed actually go to Sudan, can actually walk there or not? The first question, and the second question it will be in Arabic. So السؤال الثاني في العربية هو لماذا توقفت المفاوضات في جدة تحديدا وممكن أن تضيء لنا حقيقة العلاقة السودانية السعودية غير واضحة يعني حتى اللحظة بصراحة يعني ممكن أن توضح ما هي الإشكاليات ولماذا علقت هذه المفاوضات في جدة. Thank you.
Thank you. The NGOs, of course, the first part of your question, the NGOs, of course, they are allowed to go to Sudan. And they have been going to Sudan, some of them from this capital, especially in the beginning of the war, Maison Frontier as an example. And but currently, the problem is how they could move from Port Sudan to other parts of the Sudan. We have authorization for visas, entry into the Sudan. And as a matter of fact, as I speak to you now, there are quite an accumulation of goods that arrived to Port Sudan, stuck at the airport, the seaport. The clearance is done in a remarkable time. But then the challenge is how you guarantee the security and safety of the humanitarian workers to carry those goods to the targeted civilians. Because the RSF, there are two incidents that happened, that they've been looting to some of the goods and the aids that were going to Medani, to Jazeera in particular. In fact, they looted it after when they entered Jazeera and the Medani. They looted the warehouses of the WFP. And then now when their new supplies were coming, they looted it then. So the challenge lies with the RSF, because now they are scattered. So once they lost concentration and lost the command structure, now they're scattered and now they're looting rather than having any idea of what they should do next constructively. So the NGOs will have problems, you know. As for Jeddah, هل توقفت هي؟
هي علقت توقفت وقيل انه هي ذهبوا للبحرين للحديث عن هالموضوع فيبدو انه العلاقات السودانيه السعوديه ليس على ما يرام لكن السعوديه بذلت جهود حقيقه في تقريب وجهات النظر فيعني نريد ان نعرف لماذا توقفت حقيقه المفاوضات في جده خصوصا ما بين الطرفين ما بين يعني تحديدا ما يمثلون السودان هذه تمثل إشكالية كبيرة جدا للداخل السوداني.
العلاقات السودانية السعودية في أحسن أحوالها واحد. ثانيا المفاوضات في جدة هي لم تتوقف، هي أنجزت ما أتت إليه. بدأت هذه المفاوضات لكي نصل إلى بين المتمردين والجيش لوضع والاتفاق على هدنة وتم اتفاق على نوايا لتسهيل الممرات الإنسانية والعملية الإقاصة الإنسانية. وأهم ما في هذا الاتفاق الذي تم في مايو المنصرم 2023 أن تخرج القوات المتمردة من الأعيان المدنية، من المنازل، من المستشفيات. كل هذه الشروط لم تتم، لم يلتزم، لم يخرجوا، وما زالوا قابعين في منازل المواطنين وفي المستشفيات، وبل المستشفيات تحولت إلى مراكز يعني للأعمال العسكرية. لذلك جدة أعطت ما طلب منها، جدة كمقر للاتفاق يعني. فحديثك توقف كأنما لم تصل لنتائج، هذه مشكلة. لكن كونها هي عندها مرحلة أخرى هذا ليس يعني في مجال اختصاصي. أو الآن ما سألت الطرف الآخر من السؤال، المهم في الأمر أن الحكومة ساعية للوصول لاتفاق سلام ولإنهاء الحرب، سواء كان على الأرض أم عبر السلام. لذلك إذا حصل تغيير في المنبر فهذا لا يعني إطلاقا لأن الجولة الأولى بتاعت منبر جدة كان الهدف منه وصول لاتفاق وفي إطلاق النار، والذي لم تلتزم به الحركة المتمردة. لذلك ما ذكرت أنت من تغيير المنبر هذا لا علاقة له بجدة يعني. شكرا.
لدي سؤال آخر يعني follow up please just يعني سؤال آخر أيضا في العربية. next question will be in Arabic. يعني اللي ما يفهم عربي خليه يروح يدرس عربي اليوم. هو أمس تحديدا كان هناك حقيقة لقاء مهم جدا لوزير الخارجية الإيراني ووزير الخارجية السوداني تطبيع علاقات بعد 8 سنوات من انقطاع هذه العلاقة. كيف يؤثر هذا التقارب حقيقة على علاقة السودان دعنا نقول ليس بالمحيط العربي ولكن على المستوى الأمريكي على سبيل المثال مع الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية في المنطقة. الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية منخرطة أيضا في السودان، روسيا منخرطة في السودان، قوى إقليمية منخرطة في السودان. هذا التقارب حقيقة كيف سيؤثر على عقلية؟ بكل تأكيد الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية لا ترغب في هذا التقارب في ظل هذه المرحلة الموجودة في العالم العربي. شكرا.
الحراك الدبلوماسي السوداني ينطلق من بحث السودان عن مصالحه العليا، فهذا اللي يحكم تحرك السودان في محيطه الإقليمي والمحيط الدولي. فطبيعي جدا وإيران تجمعنا عضوية في منظمة التعاون الإسلامي وعضوية في الأمم المتحدة، وتجمعنا قضايا كثيرة أيضا نشترك فيها. فلذلك التقارب يعني انقطاع العلاقة مع إيران في 2016 كانت أسبابه معلومة. انتفت هذه الأسباب. لذلك من الطبيعي جدا أن نبحث في كيفية إعادة هذه العلاقات بما يخدم مصلحة البلدين دون التأثير على علاقاتنا الأخرى مع الدول الأخرى. ولا أعتقد أن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية هي يعني من مصلحتها أن تأزم علاقات السودان مع الدول الأخرى. نحن أولا فلتقم أمريكا بإصلاح علاقاتها مع السودان كاملة ولكي يستعيد بها من باقي علاقاته مع الدول الأخرى. لكن ما زالت حتى علاقاتنا مع الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية لم تكن في الحالة النهائية التي تضعنا في وضع أن نستغنى عن علاقاتنا مع أي دول أخرى. ودونك علاقات الدول الأخرى اللي تربطها علاقات وثيقة جدا بأمريكا ولم تقف من فتح علاقات مع دول أخرى. شكرا.
Next question. Boalia.
Thank you. Your Excellency, I'm asking you this question as a human rights advocate for Africans and people of African descent, as well as an expert advisor for the EU Asylum Agency based in Malta. My question is that how's the support and cooperation for internally displaced populations in Sudan and also for the people that have left the country? Because we're in touch with a few colleagues that had a lot of struggle to actually secure their safety, but eventually they managed to find their way. One found their way in Somalia. But in general, how's the support and the cooperation from within the continent for our people in Sudan?
Well, I'm not sure if I grasp your real question good, but the much I understand that you were asking the support for the IDPs in the IDPs.
The cooperation within the continent, how African countries support
Well, the African countries' cooperation appears in the form of opening of the borders. Countries open borders. Good example we have is Eritrea. Eritrea had an exemplary approach since the eruption of the war, that the borders were opened without any restrictions. Interestingly enough, it was from the Sudanese side that there were more restrictions because we want to make sure that not wrong people passing over, but Eritrea was opening the borders. That's an example. Egypt is also an African country in this sense, opened the borders with some limited amount of restrictions, which is understandable from the standpoint of view. Chad, which the borders are so very difficult, actually, even you can't even call them border. South Sudan, for that matter. So, in my understanding, is that this opening of borders itself shows that it's a cooperation. People feel at home. First time that we have an influx of Sudanese going into Uganda. Some of them are discovering that the next door is just like home. So this could be one of the disguises that having these blessings of getting to know one another. Thank you.
Following the same kind of issue, Ambassador, the question of migration related to European Union. So since this war between General El Buhan and General Emediti, European Union, how General Emediti is one who was supposed to control the borders. Of course, European Union decided to stop the help, the money they used to give Sudan. What is the situation now?
Well, I'm glad that you raised this question. but let me correct you first. Hemeti was General Hemeti when he was, before he rebelled. Now it's no longer general to me. It's a rebel leader. This is one. Let's correct this one. General Burhan is head of the Sovereignty Council. Still retains his status. So this is one. Two, the EU's relationship with Sudan regarding migration, it's true that the money was not paid to the then General Hemeti as General Hemeti, but as part and parcel of the government of the Sudan. So it's the government of the Sudan that was dealing with the EU, and Hemeti at the time being head of the Rapid Support Forces, which was affiliated to the regular army as a paramilitary troop, was affiliated to the national army, and was tasked with with this job because of also coming from Darfur and along the vicinity, the area. So he had competitive advantage to do the job on behalf of the Sudan. So I believe the EU acted correctly not to continue with this, because they should resolve this war first before, because if they continue to support, or funnel any amount of money, that would be totally illegal. And that's why I contested earlier why they're equating the rebels with the regular army. So I think the EU should double its efforts to assist in ending the war, so we could resume the cooperation and stop the influx of migration into the Mediterranean. And in fact, they should abide and heed to whatever agreements that be made in Khartoum process or the Rabat processes to help assist the places, the origins of the migrants, rather than stopping them, is to assist their origin, create conducive environments for them where they are as part of the international partnership. Thank you.
Yeah, but which is the decision of European Union? Because I hear that the situation is really very bad in this border, and they are having more and more refugees coming through this border, through Sudan border, to try to join European Union.
Well, that's also a fact, because you have an instability. That's why we said, if instead of having restrictive measures destabilizing the ability of the state of the Sudan to do its job, to assist together with other countries, you will continue to have this influx. You will have this. It's always going to be there, unless they embark on constructive engagement with the Sudan and other major players concerned with these migration issues, and heed to the needs of these countries in the countries of origin, and not at the point of entry into Europe. Because what I understand is some of the efforts are made into blocking people entering into the Mediterranean, but the right and constructive one is actually to make sure that they shouldn't be in a need at all to even leave their premises in the first place, by creating conducive environments there. And I understand there are provisions in the agreements in that one, but it's not been enacted. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes.
In the beginning of the war, we were being told in Brussels by the European official that the European Union is supporting from behind, supporting African Union, supporting the Arab League, supporting the Saudi and American efforts. Since then, could you give us your assessment of this European role towards all the peace effort or mediation effort by the African Union? And should the European Union maybe participating in leading instead of supporting from behind? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very complex question you're asking, but since you asked my own assessment, I feel very happy to give it to you. What I know that the EU was more involved in the political process. It put its weight on contributing to the political process. And the political process, that what I mean is that we have Jeddah was concerned with the military aspect to bring about a cessation of hostilities, that to silence the guns and create the conducive environment for political discourse. Now, he could not do them separately in a way, because what I witnessed here in Brussels for the 1 and 3 months that I've been here, that the EU held about two meetings for civilian actors, Sudanese civilian actors, in a bid to bring about, to harmonize the positions. And it's my opinion that since the conflict is in the Sudan and it's a political process, it should have involved all the political actors and players in the country, with exception, of course, to the NCP, which is very obvious during the transition period that there's consensus among the political actors that NCP should be excluded. I, however, may have a different opinion on this one, because eventually they must have come into. But since this is the agreement, then we should hold this one. There's a consensus among the political parties that the transitional period should exclude the active involvement of the NCP, which is understandable. But even the efforts that the EU carried in Brussels, assisting it in the continent, particularly in Ethiopia, or maybe in Kenya, if I'm not sure, but I know about Ethiopia, it did not involve all the players. Ironically enough, most of the participants were more against the government in Khartoum, which at sometimes could also be labeled are, I don't want to say sympathizers of the RSF, but definitely they have not condemned RSF. So it's left for you to conclude on that one. Now, when it comes to Africa, to the AU and the IGAD, as some of you may not know, that IGAD is an intergovernmental development authority, a regional, it's a sub-regional organization that Sudan is one of its co-founders. And just last month, we suspended our membership in it. And EU is the largest donor and sponsor of the programs of IGAD. So these were one of the tools that the EU was using to get itself involved in the Sudanese, in the current situation in the Sudan. And also the reason that we suspended our presence is that we come to conclusion with quite hard evidences that it wasn't neutral vis-a-vis the some, particularly some members of IGAD had some conflict of interest as far as the war is concerned, and so we deem it not conducive, environment for bringing about a solution to the problem, to the end of the war in particular. So the EU. Another irony is that these restrictive measures were announced right the day after we announced Sudan's suspension of its IGAD membership. So we are still evaluating whether is that a direct consequence to that one, or distressed by the EU for that to stable or not. But we are yet to be confronted on that issue. But we are waiting to see the linkage between the decision, our decision, and the restrictive measures that have been the subject of our conference today. As far as AU is concerned, yes, there's been engagement, even though we are still suspending our presence in the EU by the decision of the EU, the AU itself. But the EU has been involved quite behind the doors, but it still is also having good communication with the Sudan. The special envoy, Mrs. Weber, has been visiting Sudan quite regularly. So I probably believe that you may want to ask her also and let us know. Thank you.
Hussein?
Yes.
Wait a moment for the microphone.
Ambassador, I know you are busy actually with a complicated situation, even if the war inside. So my question actually about Ethiopia. Ethiopia spent time actually to has signed agreement with the Somaliland, So this is a new case, geopolitic, for Sudan. And even if you are ally, Egypt faced this as a problem actually alone. So how could deal with this is a geopolitical issue with Ethiopia?
Well, Ethiopia is a neighboring country. It's a very important country in the region. It's been very much present in our current situation we are in. It's unfortunate that step that it took. And when I say unfortunate, because the position of the AU, which Sudan adhered to, and the position of the League of Arab Nations, these are two major sub-regional entities that Sudan is a member to, and regional actually, sorry, and the United Nations as well too. They did not condone that step taken by Ethiopia, because one of the founding principles of the AU, from the OU that inherited by the AU, is the respect of the inherited borders from the colonial era. That's one of the major principles of critical laws of the AU. So Somaliland is a breakaway part of Somalia. So Sudan believes in territorial integrity of Somalia. So it's not an individual opinion of the Sudan, but it's the opinion of the AU and the Arab League Secretariat in Cairo, as well as the United Nations and the EU as well. If you heard, the EU's position was very clear. And that's why the IGAD had an extraordinary summit in Kampala last month, I believe, and with a request by Somalia to discuss that matter. And it was at the end of that summit that Sudan decided to suspend its presence, membership in IGAD, because one of the reasons as well too, because the issue of Sudan, there was a clear, blatant violations of the procedure, the rules of procedure in that extraordinary summit, because it was originally called to discuss the issue of Somaliland with Ethiopia. Then the Secretariat decided, against the will of Sudan, to table on the agenda, Sudan's case on the agenda. So to us, that was more than we could take. So thank you.
Two last questions. Nagayo, please.
You speak? My name is Nagayo Taniguchi from Japan, for Sakai and New Sokra. I see United States Secretary Blinken and high officials have been milking around in the areas of the concerns last few months. May I presume that United States and the EU are trying to have a core framework of some kind of settlements rather than UN-based peace conference? And where is the Chinese, the country which has been so much invested, South Sudan and Sudan, politically, economically, energetically, as well as military terms? Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if I'm qualified to answer for China. That's one. I'm starting from the last part of your question. As for the US and the EU's involvement, because they are visibly present in the current situation in the Sudan, whether they are milking around trying to create a framework or call for their own interest or not, it is also our own part that we are engaged constructively with the U.S. and the U.S. Together with Saudi Arabia played very important part in the beginning. As I said earlier, in May, the famous Jeddah process was co-sponsored by the U.S. and United Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So U.S. has always been present in there. The EU, of course, our very much engagement here tells you that the EU has been present there. So if they're going to create a core or not, it's also dependent on us how we also play with that. So we will see to it that it's a win-win situation to our ability, but certainly not an exploitation. Time has gone for that. Thank you.
Last question. No one? So I got the last question for me. Allow me. Yeah. So, Ambassador, of course, your relationship between Sudan and Russia, because I've heard that Wagner is still supporting Emedeti. That's true or not? Or Wagner is supporting the national army from Sudan? Thank you.
Simple answer, I don't know.
Simple question, simple answer, but you can...
That was not a simple, but mine is a simple answer. But the relationship with Russia is the one I could comment on. That Sudan's relationship with Russia started from the time of the Soviet Union. And Russia is one of the P5, one of the permanent members of the United Security Council, together with the US and China. They may not see eye to eye, but for us, we see which each one of them eye to eye. Each one of them, and I think they consider us, we are equals with them, but together they have their own club. So you can't live in this modern world and severe relationship with one of the P5. It doesn't help. So our relationship with Russia goes back to the 60s, very early time. And with China, it's true. During the previous regime, China played a pivotal role in the extraction of the Sudanese oil at that time, and did quite a lot of construction in the Sudan, which the government of Sudan was in very much dire need of for that one, because at the same time the U.S. was doing everything possible to break Sudan down. So it all depends. Now the U.S. is now doing everything to make sure that the war ends, I believe. Of course, with some punches here and there, because they're also making some sanctions as usual, because it's one of the tools that the U.S. policy is always known with, foreign policy, the issue of sanctions, though they never worked. They always, in my opinion, harmed the vulnerable ones, not the governments. So I think with Russia, our relationship with Russia, it's normal, no problem.
Thank you. As closing remarks, as Ambassador of Sudan here in Brussels, European capital, which is your last message for the European Union?
Well, my last message will be that the EU will be very much instrumental in its partnership with the Sudan, because I speak for the Sudan, because we share so many platforms of cooperation, ACP, and the initiatives of Horn of Africa initiative, that's EU, Solid EU initiative. The issues of migrations, that's the bilateral between the EU and the Sudan. So to maximize the earning and gains and a win-win situation from such a relationship, there ought to be a more constructive engagement with the Sudan and taking Sudan's as they, Sudanese, want to be taken, not as Europe wants Sudan to be. We want to be treated as how, because we treat Europeans and others as how they want to be. And they should understand our needs and help us achieve, and so doing will definitely reach into a win-win situation. Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us here in Brussels Press Club, and we hope that your work, your message will be heard here in European Union too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.